It's always great to have our friend Byron Donalds on the program, superstar there in the House of Representatives. How are you?
I'm doing good, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. How's the family?
Listen, family is good. You know, my oldest son is actually home for a little bit of time, and I'm here in D.C. as, you know, we're dealing with debt ceiling and all this other foolishness up here. But, you know, things are good. And honestly, I think our conference is actually holding strong, and I like where we are. You know, I think the key thing for people to know is that, you know, we're together, we're unified. I just want to make sure that that continues because I think we're in a really great spot.
Boy, they thought they could roll you guys, didn't they? At the White House and the Democrats, they thought that some of you guys would peel off. You pulled together. You've come up with a plan that is actually quite rational and conservative. And the Democrats aren't sure what to do about it, right? I mean, you have some cuts in there, and then you want to limit the amount of increase for future years. And this is where they're going nuts, right?
Absolutely. Look, first of all, if they thought we were going to just fold and not be successful, they didn't pay attention to the first week. Because I think we proved even in that first week as we went through, you know, that battle with Speaker McCarthy, that what Republicans are committed to is the House of Representatives actually doing its job and not just, you know, putting out talking points and moving on. The second big thing is in that bill, the spending cuts needed, getting rid of the student loan craziness, the IRS agents, that's ridiculous. All that stuff is key. But one of the key components, and this is one that the White House wants, are these IRA subsidies. These IRA subsidies are to fund these radical Green New Deal companies run by these left-wing billionaires. And they want these subsidies because this is the Democrats' way of achieving these Paris Climate Accord standards, which Mark, you and I know, isn't going to do anything for the climate. It's a shell game. And even the Europeans are starting to backpedal off this Green New Deal stuff because it was easy to be green when you were getting your oil and gas from Russia. And when you got to figure out your own energy matrix, they're realizing this stuff doesn't work. So those are the things that are in our bill. It's important that we hold firm. And I think the American people are with us. Even CNN's having to report that one because people realize, look, if you're going to raise debt, you might need to address your spending. And I think the American people are there. And so I like our position a lot better than their position.
Tell us, expand on this because I'm not familiar. IRA subsidies, what's going on there?
So the Inflation Reduction Act, or what we call it the Inflation No Reduction Act, what that actually did, it was the Green New Deal's little sister. That's really what the bill is. In there, they put in these subsidies specifically for green energy, right? The CBO said that it was going to cost about $309 billion. But Goldman Sachs did their own estimate, and they said it's actually going to cost $1.2 trillion because all these companies were going to be formed, and they were going to apply for the subsidies. So even this morning on MSNBC, they're talking about, oh, yeah, a lot of people are applying for these subsidies, and they're saying this is great because these green energy projects that were not economically viable before, because of the tax credits, they're now economically viable. And this is the stuff that the White House, in my view, they're saying is the holy grail. And so I think it's important that we hold the line on that stuff because we cannot turn our energy grid, our electric grid, over to green energy. It's not sustainable. We're going to have blackouts and brownouts through our country. And, Mark, one last thing to add on this. We had a hearing on this gas stove ban by the EPA, another ridiculous thing. And we're telling them that if you went to all-electric stoves and all-electric cars and you have solar panels and windmills powering our grid, we're going to have blackouts and brownouts in our country. There's not enough electricity on the grid for their crazy ideas. And it's important that we hold the line on this stuff right now.
100%. And they're attacking the grid. They're making it much more difficult for public utilities. They're attacking them. In other words, they're attacking every part of the horizontal functioning of our energy system, from production to usage, from production to automobiles to lawnmowers. Some of them want to get rid of, and on and on and on. These people are ideologues, aren't they, Byron? They don't have the foggiest idea what they're doing, do they?
No, they don't. Listen, I was in our committee today, Cori Bush, she's the ranking member, and she's just going on and on about how, oh, this is going to help black and brown people fight climate change in their own houses. And I'm looking at her like, did you ever ask black and brown people what the cost would be for getting rid of gas stoves? and the technological cost going to be borne by them having to buy these new stoves? What if you have to remodel your kitchen because it's got a natural gas hookup and it doesn't have an electricity cord hookup because you can't just plug it into any regular old socket? It's a special socket for electric stoves. So they don't know what they're talking about. This is all this radical dogma at I guess their current god, which is the Green New Deal. But at the end of the day, it's about power. It's about their agenda. They do not care what it means to the average American, but we do, and that's what conservatives are fighting for on your show, up here on Capitol Hill, and throughout the states where conservatives either have a majority or trying to hold off the radicalness of the left in some of these other states.
Have you noticed when you go on these other shows, these other media platforms, because I see that you're trying to reach out to more people in different, who watch different programs and so forth, CNN, I think it was Meet the Press, some of these. Have you noticed they don't want you to get your point across? They just cut you off, or they distract you, or try to distract you. Have you noticed they don't want to have an honest, substantive discussion? You haven't had one yet on any of these platforms.
No, they definitely don't want. They don't want that, because if you have a detailed discussion about their policy, they realize that it's a failure and they're going to lose. But the reason why, I told my district when I was running for Congress that if I'm your congressman, I'm going to take our message everywhere, because there are people who listen. I think your show is great. Obviously, one of the best. I've been a listener for a long time, Mark. But there are people who don't listen to your show. I don't know why, but they don't. And I think that we got to take our message everywhere.
Well, we ought to give them a tax credit if they listen. We ought to give them a tax credit. Why not? Everybody else gets one. Just kidding.
I agree. But taking the message, I think, is critical. And we got to do that, and that's what I'm going to do.
If I read the New York Times and watch these other shows, I don't know what the hell's going on. I really don't know what's going on. I'm being fed a real lot of other stuff. Now, what about immigration here? I mean, Joe Biden is all in. This just won't stop. Honestly, unless the president is going to help stop, it makes it tough to stop what's going on the border. So I don't know what can be done.
Well, look, my solution is actually the solution of myself, Chip Roy, a lot of the members of the Freedom Caucus, and actually a lot of members. We're saying that since Joe Biden doesn't live in reality when it comes to the debt ceiling, we should up the ante. We should add in the border security bill we just passed off the House floor and add that into the debt ceiling bill and say, listen, you want to raise $4 trillion to get the national debt past the next election? Well, then you need to secure the border, because that unsecured border is not just costing red states, it's costing blue states. Everybody's suffering under this. So I think that's one of the strategies that we can use to actually get this thing done, even with a knucklehead like Biden in office.
We are here with Byron Donalds of Florida. Byron Donalds, how has Kevin McCarthy's leadership been?
Mark, I'll tell you, it's been really good. We've had a very open dialogue here in the House, with members and the Speaker, with different groups of our conference with the Speaker, and everything that we've been doing. A lot of this stuff is being worked on together in collaboration, and that's only possible if your leader, if your Speaker allows that, and he's allowed that. And then the second piece is that when we go and take what we're doing to the American people, he's done a tremendous job. So I think he's doing great. I think that he just needs to continue to just do what he's doing. And when we have these engages with the White House, frankly, I try to tell my colleagues, guys, we can't look at these debates with the White House like we're dealing with Barack Obama. I mean, this is Joe Biden. They can't even stand this guy out in front of the press. He doesn't even talk to the press. So let's do it. Let's have national debates with him. We'll win those. But I think he's done a really good job in doing that, leading our conference, and we think it's going to continue.
And I think because of all this, he's become very popular with the Republican Party and the people. That is, he's probably, and thanks to guys like you, but him too, the most conservative speaker we've had since Newt Gingrich, wouldn't you say? I mean, Bonnier and Paul Ryan was a huge disaster and disappointment, and I don't know. I've talked to him. He just seems really happy about where he is right now.
No, I agree. And again, I think I don't want to understate the importance of the collaborative environment he's really had here with us, because we're engaging with his leadership team and then engaging with the other members of the conference, some of these policy issues that there were previous disagreements on in the past that just get lost on the shelf or tossed on the floor because not everybody understood it or could get their arms around it or figure out how to message back home on it. We're figuring that stuff out as a Republican conference. So we're putting forward the best package possible, and it gives the speaker room to negotiate and to really lead. And I think that's a credit to him because, like I said, it's easy to be, a dictator in the speaker's office, but to really work with all the members is hard work, and he's been committed to that.
And how's it going in Florida? These hurricanes come and go. The American people watch it for a week or two, and then we never hear anything about it. How's the rebuilding going in your district?
Well, look, this is really about the constituency. They have been working hard since, day one after the storm. It's going pretty well. We still have a long way to go. Our biggest issue, frankly, has been FEMA and the SBA. I mean, FEMA, up until 2 weeks ago, were telling my constituents who were living in travel trailers that they had to get out of them by August 1 because FEMA was concerned about the new hurricane season. And we were pushing back on FEMA saying, what are you talking about? There's this thing called Doppler radar. We have a national hurricane center that we fund with millions, tens of millions of dollars. We know when a storm is coming. So if there's a storm coming, we can hook the trailers up to something and haul them out of there and get them out of harm's way. We think they're starting to reverse course because we've been putting the pressure on. And in SBA, they've approved these disaster recovery loans, but they're not funding them. The dumbest thing in the world.
What good does that do?
Want to give them lending authority. Exactly. And so people at home, they're doing the job. Our county commission, our local leaders, our people, they're rebuilding as fast as they can. Things are looking a lot better than even I thought they would be. But the federal government, man, I got to tell you, we have some serious reforms we need to do in these agencies because they're a joke.
And yet, it must make you nervous. It makes me nervous with the home that we have on the eastern side. They say it's going to be a bad hurricane season. I mean, that's no fun.
Yeah.
Now, all this said...
No fun, but...
Yeah. Now, all this said, Byron, here's the thing. Climate change. What is the perfect temperature for the Earth? Do we have one? Do we know what it is?
No, I have no idea.
Nobody does, do they? And when they say the ocean has risen 7 to 8 inches since 1890... Some guy wrote a great piece. He said the ocean's 12,080 feet deep. We don't know if since 1890 the ocean has risen 7 to 9 inches. That's smaller than your foot. Nobody knows that for sure. All of this is crap. That's why they have to impose their will on us like good little Leninists from the top down. They're going to destroy the automobile industry. They're going to destroy what was the energy independence. They're going to destroy mobility. They're going to force people into smaller and smaller homes. They're already reaching into our homes trying to control various appliances and so forth. They're trying to control the automobile. This is not a joke. This is not a conspiracy. These people are serious about this stuff, aren't they?
They really are. And Mark, to quote a phrase you've said so many times in your show, it's an authoritarian mindset because they believe wholeheartedly they are right. They've created these outside groups who create feedback with the research or that the pseudo research they want to see. It reinforces their worldview. They have this compliant lapdog media that's in the tank that only wants to regurgitate the talking points they want. And then if people begin to challenge, they shut them down, they ignore them. And if the press actually has questions, they just ignore the press. And then they wait for one moment in time where they might have the votes, and they ram it all through, no questions asked. If that is something that is against liberty and freedom, I don't know what is. And it's really bad for our country. And unfortunately, a lot of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they're serious about this stuff, and too many of them haven't even dug into the information to really question if this is going to be viable and actually work for the American people.
You know, you're an example of really how America is supposed to function. I want you to remind people, because it's easy to forget, you weren't always a conservative. You didn't always have these views. Then you really started to read and look into this stuff. And that's very, very important that leading by example. Explain to people how you came to your conclusions now.
I came to really conservatism through my career, through economics. Like, I'm a finance major by trade. I worked in the financial industry. And when I first started looking at politics, what the talking points were, they didn't make any sense at all to me. And so I really started to read about the history of politics, the history of liberalism and conservatism, and that political philosophy made sense to me. So you marry the political philosophy with an economic philosophy, based upon F.A. Hayek and Milton Friedman, and that's really the essence of modern conservatism. And from there, that's where I got my views from. I tell people briefly, Mark, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. And if it makes money for people and people can earn it and grow it for themselves, that's something that's sustainable. You can build on that. If you got to run to some government to get a quasi subsidy and all these rules that shut out a bunch of people, that's not sustainable, and it doesn't work, and it only causes more dislocation for a country. But that came through just reading and analyzing stuff, and frankly, listening to shows like yours, and just taking the time to think this stuff through, having debates with people, and really deciding that, this is the policies I can stand behind, and this is the philosophy I can get behind, and that was my journey.
It's my journey too. As a teenager, starting to read Mises and Hayek and Friedman. Used to watch Friedman on PBS. Used to watch Bill Buckley, and got National Review. It really does. It really makes a difference. And I'm pointing this out because there's a lot of great people who came before us, and we can learn from them. And that's part of conservatism. It's also part of faith that the world doesn't begin today. And we don't have a bunch of brand new ideas. We have to take our principles and apply them to what's taking place today. But these principles are forever, are they not?
They are forever, because at the end of the day, if you're going to have a country, and look, America is the greatest country in the world by far. Everybody born here, they got the Willy Wonka golden ticket. Being born here is better than being born anywhere else. But the only way any society can continue itself is that you have to have sound principles of economics that allow your country to thrive. You have to have sound principles of governing, which keep your government limited and focused on the job it should do and no more. And you have to have sound principles of individual liberty and respect for individual liberty, so people can live their lives, speak their values, organize themselves, grow their families, and then you just rinse and repeat. And if you have that, you can have a successful society. And America has that. It's not always been perfect, but America has that. And I think the battle right now is to make sure that we keep that.
All right, fantastic. Well, Byron Donalds, we appreciate you, buddy. Keep it up, and thanks very much.